and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 503, and today's date is October 28th, 2014, and the title of this episode is People of Libya on the Verge of Capturing Oilfields, Central Bankers Preparing to Make Their Move. Before I get started, for those people who didn't know why I didn't do a report on Monday, it was because my computer crashed. It looks like the fans inside my laptop stopped, it overheated, and the whole thing just kind of melted down here, and it is an old laptop, and I'm going to be looking to get a new one. I just have to save for it, and once I get a new one, I should be okay. But it seems like I have it back up and running, and it's working, and hopefully it'll hold out until I get a new one, and that is why there was no report on Monday. Let's get into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand that the Middle East is completely falling apart. I mean, Libya, Yemen, Iraq, and we can see they're making their move to get into Syria, and they realize that the people of each one of these countries are rising up, and they're trying to take back their countries. And we can see now in Libya, Libya is falling. And these central bankers are getting very worried and very nervous. They are headed towards the oil fields. And we know what happened when the tribes tried to take oil, put it on a tanker, set sail to find a buyer. The sail team was on that tanker. No time flat, brought it right back to port because they know exactly where the oil is, they know where it's going, and they know exactly from satellite images, and they track all of it. And this is why all this about the Islamic State of, oh yeah, they're making tons of money from all this oil, we don't know where it's going. They know exactly where it's going. Plus, the Islamic State is controlled by the United States, it's controlled by UK, it's controlled by Israel and other Arab nations, and they're selling the oil using the US dollar, so that is perfectly fine. They set it up this way, and of course, as we know, all of this is being done to get into Syria and then eventually into Iran. And this is why we are seeing all of this chaos in the Middle East. And they're continuing this. And eventually what's going to happen is this whole thing is going to turn into World War III, because they are preparing right now to go into Syria. They're preparing to bring troops in, to put boots on the ground. This is why you hear the government officials today talking about boots on the ground. This is why you hear about no-fly zones. This is why they're setting up a division headquarters. This is why they are setting up an air base in Iraq. They are preparing for what is coming. This is why they want an air base in Turkey, and they want the training of the Free Syrian Army in Turkey, because all they have to do is send them right across the border. It is all being set up, and we can see it happening right in front of our eyes. Why is this all happening? Because the entire economy is completely falling apart, and as we've been getting warnings upon warnings from many different financial analysts and other people saying that, you know, Europe is in a bad place, United States real economic indicators are completely falling apart, the stock market is meaningless, and we all knew this all this time. I mean, this is not a surprise. We knew from following all of this, real estate, retail, unemployment, that all of this is complete fake, phony, and false. And we also understand that Europe is in a deep recession. Some countries are in a depression, and others are teetering on a recession. It is all falling apart, and they know it. And this is why they're trying to accelerate everything as fast as they possibly can, because as they know that this cannot be sustained, it will fall apart. And they already saw some evidence of this when the stock market started coming down, and the Fed officials from all over the country, from each state, came out and said, oh, we're going to extend QE. QE4 is coming. They needed to do this to pump the market back up, because people started to realize, wait a minute, the company's earnings, retail sales, everything isn't what's going on here, and everything's starting to fall apart, and there's no more QE. Holy, I better get out of the market right now. And we can see they're trying everything they possibly can to keep the illusion alive long enough, because they do not want to be blamed for this collapse. And when I say they, I'm talking about the U.S. government central bankers. They believe after all of this, all the war and everything else, they will again restart this entire system, and they don't care what it takes as long as they're not blamed and they restart this entire system and the people do not come after them with pitchforks. So they are doing everything they possibly can to take your eyes off of them and move them onto a different group or country. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, we see that the consumer confidence has surged to 94.5. It's the highest since October 2007, and we know what happened in October of 2008 going forward. Everything fell apart. And during this time in October of 2007, what did we see happening? Real estate started to decline. People weren't coming out to purchase homes anymore. Prices started to come down. Realtors didn't understand what was going on. And we can see right now there was a surge. And why was there a surge? Well, people have the hope, the dream that their income is going to get better as time goes on. And guess what? It really isn't. And I know people can believe it. They hope for it. They think that things are just going to work out and their incomes are going to go up next year. And we can see right now that more people are being laid off. Unemployment statistics are completely fake, phony, false. It's an illusion. Once those people are laid off, they send out their resumes. They cannot find the work. There is no work out there, so they go to the part-time jobs, and everyone does, in their hearts, do believe that they will be getting a better job, that their incomes will be going up with raises, they'll be getting a promotion, and everyone does believe this because they want to have that hope, but this is not going to happen. If we look across Europe, we can see their unemployment rate is skyrocketing. The youth unemployment is skyrocketing. The same thing's happening here, but it's completely masked by these fake numbers. And we're seeing more economic indicators coming out. Durable goods, new orders dropped 1.3% month on month, missing expectations by the most since December of 2013, and negative for the second month in a row. Durable goods, new orders fell 18.3% in August. New orders, if you exclude transportation, fell 0.2% in September. New orders, if you remove defense, fell 1.5% in September. Non-defense capital good orders, if you remove aircraft and defense sales, it fell 1.7 in September. So we're not seeing very good signs of the economy improving right now. And also, as the markets in Europe and all the emerging nations slow, there are going to be fewer exports to these countries because they're not going to be buying any of this merchandise. So we're going to see this completely decline as time goes on. Now, we had a report that came out that pending home sales kind of disappointed, and looks like real estate is not doing as well as everyone is led to believe, from the Obama administration, from the Federal Reserve, letting us know that, yes, we're in a complete recovery. And we're seeing that housing supply for existing homes was up in September 6% from a year ago. Now, why are there more houses on the market? Well, as we know, when there's more houses on the market, prices don't seem to go up. They start to come down. And when you don't have those buyers, we run into additional problems. And this is what we're seeing at this time. And again, this goes on from the National Association of Realtors. It is preventing prices from rising at the accelerated clip seen earlier this year. Tight credit conditions continue to be a barrier for some buyers. Well, that's because they don't have good jobs. Their credit were ruined back in 2008. They haven't saved up the proper amount of money, and you're not going to get a house. And of course, the government's trying to get around this by having people put down 3%. They're trying to have people go in with subprime credit to try to get these loans. And as we know, the American people are pretty much tapped out at this point. And this is why we saw mortgage companies laying off tens of thousands of people starting in August of 2013 going forward, because they realize the American people just don't have the capital, the credit to go out and purchase these homes. Now, 15% of realtors in September reported having clients who could not obtain financing as the reason for not closing on the sale. So they went, they put a little deposit down, they want this house, it looks great. rates are very low, but guess what? They couldn't get the financing. Their credit wasn't there. And the National Association of Realtors is saying, don't worry. And they said the qualified residential mortgages should improve access to credit once it goes into effect next year. The rule provides clarity for lenders and is a win for credit-worthy consumers by ensuring they can continue to have access to safe and affordable loan products without overly burdensome down payment requirements. And what does this really mean? That we're going back to what happened back in 2007 going into 2008, where all these people who went to get their houses to buy them, they didn't have credit, they didn't have the down payment, they took adjustable rate mortgages, and guess what? When the interest rates started to go up and things started to fail and lost their jobs, the whole thing started to fall apart. We're going to see the same thing happen. They're doing this trick with auto sales right now. They're giving loans to anyone that has a heartbeat, but what's happening is delinquencies are up about 70%. These cars are being repossessed, and sales are starting to slow and decline in the auto industry, and we're seeing that happen right now. Now, it looks like the deceleration in home prices continues. The Sun Belt region reported its worst annual return since 2012, led by weakness in all three California cities, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and San Diego. Las Vegas continues to see a sharp deceleration in their annual home prices with a 10.1% annual return, down just below 3% from last month. And we can see that many of the cities now are showing that prices are coming down. I looked around the nation right now, and there's a lot of areas where people are having their houses on the market for about 60, 90, even 120 days, lowering their prices many times. They just can't get the people to come and purchase these homes. And what's very interesting, and as we know, that real estate, the boom time when they said we were in this recovery just, a couple months ago when Obama was out there, this was all cash buyers by hedge funds, investment companies, and they were trying to convince us that Americans were out there again buying homes. But here's the proof that it wasn't Americans. The last time U.S. home ownership declined down to 64.4% was back in the fourth quarter of 1983. We are at that level for U.S. home ownership. So who is buying these homes? That's right, investment companies, hedge funds with cash. They're getting the free money from the Fed. It's all out there. They own it. They're trying to rent it. And what they're trying to do now is unload it. Guess what? They can't find the people to buy it. And this is why U.S. home ownership is so low at this point. Now, it seems that the U.S. Mint's Eagle Gold coins sales are up in October. It looks like people are starting to catch on, and they're starting to think to themselves, maybe I should own a little bit of gold. The U.S. Mint has sold nearly 60,000 ounces of American Eagle Gold coins so far in October. It's the highest monthly sales since January, and we can see right now we're going to see this increase as time goes on because people are going to get very nervous about the economy. QE is supposed to end this month, and I think it might have just ended, but again, we know that they're still stimulating the economy through back channels, buying bonds through Euroclear, through Belgium and other countries. They're still giving free money to the banks to have them put into the stock market. It's just not reported. It's all done through back channels, so people really don't realize what's going on. And this way they can say, yeah, we're out of the QE business. We're not doing it anymore. But as soon as that was mentioned, if you notice, the stock market came crashing down, and they had to mention it one more time to bring it back up. And we're still seeing the market bouncing up and down, and it looks like today the market was pushed way up today, and we'll have to see what happens during the week. I'm sure we're going to see the fluctuation going up and down. And again, gold has been suppressed to make sure that people don't realize that the economy is failing, and they're trying to convince everyone, all eyes on the stock market, everything is fine. Now, it looks like China made an announcement today, and it looks like they're going to be doing direct trading between the renminbi and the Singapore dollar beginning Tuesday, a step that is likely to increase international usage of the yuan by lowering trading costs. The Chinese government is gradually relaxing its hold over the yuan and making it a global reserve currency. China is also under pressure to diversify its foreign exchange reserves. The announcement by China Foreign Exchange Trading System extended the yuan's list of direct onshore trade to more major currencies, including the US dollar, Russian ruble, the euro, the British sterling, Japanese yen, Australian dollar, New Zealand dollar, the Malaysian ringgit. The PBOC has also authorized offshore renminbi clearing and settlement arrangements in Singapore, London, Frankfurt, Seoul, Paris, and Luxembourg, as well as Taiwan, Hong Kong, and other places. HSBC expects the yuan to be one of the top 3 global trade currencies by 2015, and we can see they are definitely making strides in putting the yuan and renminbi out there. They're making deals all over the globe right now, and again, the United States central bankers do not want this to happen. They don't want the BRIC system to go live in January of 2015, and this is why they have the protests happening in China. They're trying to gin something up there. Hopefully they would like to remove the government and replace a puppet government in this, but again, this doesn't always work out, and we can see that China is taking steps to stop this right now. But let's look at Obamacare. There's a report out there saying that 214,000 doctors are opting out of Obamacare exchanges. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. And for those people who have been listening to me, you understand Obamacare is not a benefit to the people. It is a benefit to the insurance companies and to the government. And like I said before, if it is a benefit to the people, then we needed to see our leadership when this thing went live to sit in front of a computer and say, you know what, I am dropping my governmental insurance and I'm taking Obamacare. And I will take that bronze plan where we have a $5,000 to $10,000 deductible and the benefits are absolutely trash, and I will use it. But they didn't do that. They exempted themselves, and this is how we know this is not good for the people. And also, we also understand Obamacare is intertwined with penalties and taxes to force people to take this, and we also understand that Obamacare has a clause in there that the government will bail out the insurance companies if not enough people take Obamacare. So they covered themselves in all aspects to make sure that they don't lose, except the only people that do lose are the American people. But it looks like 214,000 doctors won't participate in the new plans under the Affordable Care Act. And this is coming from the Medical Group Management Association survey. An estimated 70% of California physicians were not participating in covered California plans. And here are some of the reasons they're giving why they're not going to participate. Reimbursements under Obamacare are at bottom dollar. They are even lower than Medicare reimbursements, which are already significantly below market rates. It is estimated that there were the private plans paid about $1 for their service. Medicare plans paid for about 80 cents, and the Affordable Care Act is paying about 60 cents for their services. Doctors are expected to take on more patients to make up for the lost revenue. But that's not going to happen because the primary care doctors already have more patients than they can handle at this time. And MA study indicates that 75% of the Affordable Care Act patients that had seen doctors had chosen plans with high deductibles. Given that most patients are low income, doctors are concerned that the patients cannot meet the deductibles and they will get stuck with the bill. HHS requires that insurers cover customers for an additional 90 days after they have paid their premiums. The insurer covers the first 60, and then the doctor has to make up the other 30. This is the number one reason providers are opting to not participate in the exchange plan. So we can see right now we have doctors removing themselves from the plans. People do not want Obamacare, and we can see people are not getting a benefit from this. And again, we just have to look at the evidence. Do you really want a government to manage your health insurance when they couldn't put together a website to give you the health insurance? It makes no sense whatsoever. And again, this is not a benefit for the people. Now it looks like, and this is coming out of End of the American Dream, that the government is very paranoid with everyone in the country. and they're spying on pretty much everyone. And there are a couple reasons and signs that point to this. A former CBS News reporter, Cheryl Atkinson, says that the federal government was so concerned about her reporting on Benghazi, Fast and Furious, and other Obama scandals that they hacked her computer, monitored every keystroke, and even planted classified material in an apparent attempt to potentially frame her. The United States has become the nation of the permanent emergency. In fact, there has been at least one state of emergency in effect in this country since 1979. In America today, almost everyone is considered to be a criminal. At this point, nearly 1 out of every 3 Americans has a file in the FBI's master criminal database. Most of the people don't realize this, but the FBI also systematically records talk radio programs. The FBI says that it is looking for potential evidence. This is absolutely ridiculous. According to guidelines that were recently made public, purchasing Amtrak train tickets with cash is considered to be suspicious activity and needs to be reported to the authorities. Also, paying for an airline ticket with cash is also the same thing. And we're starting to realize and notice that anything purchased with cash is suspicious at this time to the government. The IRS can now seize your bank accounts on suspicious alone. And again, why are they doing this? Because this is the end game. They need to get as much money into the government as they possibly can, and they don't care. They will use no evidence whatsoever. They will just confiscate your bank account. And this is why in the past we've been telling people, because of the balance and for these reasons and other reasons, not to keep a huge balance in the bank account. Keep enough to pay your bills. Of course, this is my opinion. This is what I do. And we can see that as things start to progress here, the DHS has the ability to go into safety deposit box and confiscate whatever is in the safety deposit box. Now it looks like the IRS can confiscate your accounts with pretty much just on suspicion. And this is a reason why we should be looking at the situation and saying, should I keep my money in the bank? The feds have apparently become extremely concerned about what all of us are saying on the internet. In fact, they have been caught manipulating discussions on Reddit and editing Wikipedia. And we know this for a fact. There are trolls out there. They monitor everything that's going on. They're looking for those people who are a threat to their authority. They're very, very nervous because they realize there's millions of us, 350 million of us, and only a couple of them. And if the people decide and all get together and say, wait a minute, something's going on here and they're not acting in our best interest, I believe it's time to remove them. This is what they're really nervous about. To the government, each citizen is a potential threat, and this justifies the militarization of our entire society. And this is why DHS has infiltrated a lot of the local law enforcement, giving them grants, giving them tanks, machine guns, armored uniforms, surveillance equipment, because they're getting ready for this. They realize the collapse is coming. They understand there's going to be riots. They realize that people are going to take to the streets, and this is not going to be an easy situation. The federal government is so paranoid that it is actually spying on itself. The Insider Threat Program encourages federal employees to closely watch one another and to report any hint of suspicious activity. NSA constantly spying on all of us. The NSA is monitoring and recording billions of our phone calls and emails, and most Americans don't seem to care at this point, which I don't understand. It's completely in violation of your Fourth Amendment. Even if you're not doing anything wrong, it is within your rights to say, I don't want the government spying on me. And the reason why you don't is because they start making connections. For example, they're spying on you, and I'm not doing anything wrong, but you know someone who's part of a different organization that's talking badly about the government. Well, that goes into your social profile. A link is made, and guess what? They don't know exactly what you're thinking, but they know you're friends with that person. So guess what? You're being picked up too. And this is why the government should have no business in spying on the people. And let's even go with something even simpler. Let's say you came up with some type of invention and you're trying to get it the patent to it. Well, guess what? A government official who's spying on you can steal that from you. You would have no idea. They can go to the patent office, patent it, and you lose out. You come up with an investment idea or a business idea, they can take it. There's so many different reasons why our founding fathers put this into the Bill of Rights. There was a specific reason, and you can see that all of these reasons, and there's many, many more, it's all put there to protect you from them, because they cannot be trusted. The government cannot be trusted. Now, it looks like St. Louis businesses are warning of civil unrest after the grand jury decision with the whole thing that happened with Michael Brown. A St. Louis property manager is warning businesses near the St. Louis County Courthouse to prepare for civil unrest in the wake of imminent grand jury decision in the Michael Brown shooting. The warning to businesses came by way of letter dated October 21st, addressed to all tenants in the Boulevard Shopping Center in Richmond Heights. The shopping center is less than a mile and a half from the site of the grand jury proceeding in Clayton, Missouri. The letter further notes that the authorities anticipate that the grand jury's decision will be announced in November at the earliest. This fits with other media reports also predict a November announcement. And again, the U.S. government would love this to happen. They would love the riots to go throughout Missouri, spread to other states, because their main goal is to declare martial law, suspend the Constitution, and to lock everything down. And this is why in Ferguson, when we saw this really ramping up, we saw people from the outside coming in. When people were asking, who are you, why are you here, they ran away. These were all agent provocateurs trying to gin the whole situation up, and they were pushing this as hard as they can, but it didn't go anywhere. Now, let's get into Ebola. Now, it seems there are new reports coming out saying that Ebola can now last on objects for about 50 days. During tests, the UK Defence Science and Technology Laboratory found that the Zaire strain will live on samples stored on glass at low temperatures for as long as 50 days. So basically, if you're on a train, you're on a plane, you're on a bus, you're in a store, and it's a little cool out, somebody who has Ebola touches a window, you come up and lean against that window, you could get it. This is what this is saying right now. And it looks like all countries are taking precautions, starting to ban travelers from West Africa. And guess what? The United States does not want to ban anyone from West Africa. They want to keep the traffic going back and forth completely open. And we have to ask, why? What is the agenda, and why do they leave it open? Well, the reason for it is because what I still think is they're trying to maneuver their way into each one of these countries, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Guinea, Congo, Mali, and they want troops set up. We already know UK has troops in the area, and Sierra Leone, about 3,000 coming down to that area. We understand the United States government is bringing in around 4,000 troops into this area, and that strange remark from the UN ambassador to Liberia saying that the troops are not here to take over the government, but to help with Ebola. And of course, the reports are continually coming out saying that the soldiers are not going to be in contact with any Ebola patients. So the question is, what exactly are they doing there, and what are they waiting for? Now, Australia, they are out there and they're coming under fire, and they're saying, you know what, we are putting a ban, a temporary ban, in place on visas from West African nations affected by the Ebola outbreak. And they are stopping people from coming into the country, because their evidence shows from all the different countries in Africa who closed their borders and stopped people from coming in from those infected areas, it has not occurred in those countries. So we can see it does work. But for some reason here in the United States, they don't want the business people going down there, putting bids in to drill for oil, and it seems they're keeping this open because, of course, it's part of another agenda. Now, the CDC right now continually comes up with all different information on quarantines and how they're going to approach Ebola. They keep changing it, and I go back to this. They've been dealing with Ebola for over a year. You're trying to tell me they can't figure out how Ebola spreads, what protection you need. We see the CDC, when they come into any area They're in full uniform with respirators, no open skin whatsoever, but for everyone else, that doesn't matter. But it seems like they're changing a little at a time. But again, they're looking at the situation and saying no, and all their statements are contradictory. They make no sense whatsoever. And to me, it looks like they're taking instruction from the Obama administration in what they have to say and what they want to do, because Obama is completely out there over and over telling that no, we don't need quarantines, we don't need this, because we understand that New York and New Jersey put mandatory quarantines into place for those people coming from West Africa who treated people in West Africa, like the nurse or the doctor, Casey Hickox, which we're starting to find out that she has ties to the CDC, and of course she was placed in mandatory quarantine, and she screamed and yelled that my civil rights are being violated. But we have to look at the situation, and we're going to break this down a little bit simpler. I have children. I don't know how many of you have children, but you can remember when you went to school. If you had strep throat and you went to school, what did they do? They told you cannot be in the school. They sent you home until what? You got medication and you were cured, so you were quarantined in your home. If you had lice, they did not want you in the school. They sent you home. If you had lice, you had to come back, and they had to check you with a test by looking through your hair to make sure that you didn't have lice, and then you were allowed back into the school. The same thing's happening now. They are not being put into prison, but if you are a doctor and you are going to West Africa, and you're going to treat people with Ebola, it is common sense that you could be infected. Yes, it's a possibility. And you should be in some type of quarantine until there's a time where it says, okay, you do not have to do this anymore, you're cleared. And the quarantine can be in your house. You can watch TV, you can work from home, you have the internet, you can do everything you want, you're not in prison. I do not have a problem with that. That is common sense, because I'd rather have someone in quarantine complaining than infect hundreds of people. And that's me personally. But it seems like this Casey Hickox is out there complaining, but we're finding out that she has ties to the Center of Disease Control by virtue of being an official CDC Epidemic Intelligence Service officer. Hickox has listed as an active EIS officer as recently as July 18, 2014, per the CDC's own documentation. Hickox retained attorney Norman Siegel to file a lawsuit on her behalf, alleging civil rights violations due to the mandatory quarantine issued by the state of New Jersey because of the possibility Hickox could be infected with Ebola. In an interesting coincidence, Siegel happened to be an official guest at the White House State Dinner on February 11, 2014, and it also seems that Hickox might have ties to Obama's campaign and the Democratic Party. So it seems that this person isn't exactly who she says it is. And we're seeing quite a bit of this, just almost like when the woman who was testifying with Kuwait with the incubators, we found out that she was the daughter of the ambassador. It always seems like there's another agenda here, and Obama does not want people quarantined for any reason. They should be allowed to roam free, and it seems like there is another agenda here, and it seems like the CDC has a lot of contradictions, because it seems like they're taking their instructions from the Obama administration. CDC is out there saying we base our decisions on science and experience. We base our decisions on what we know and what we learn. And as the science and experience changes, we adopt and adapt our guidelines and recommendations. Then it sounds great. And I call it management babble. But Frieden contradicted his own CDC pronouncements on how Ebola is transmitted. Frieden said Ebola only spreads through the direct contact with someone who is sick or their bodily fluids. The highest risks are in people who are providing caregiving, especially as patients become increasingly sick. But the new guidelines state there is some risk in having close contact, not direct contact, with a person infected with Ebola. Under the some risk category, some subject to direct active monitoring by health officials is a person who had close contact in households, healthcare facilities, or community settings with a person with Ebola while the person was symptomatic. The CDC defines close contact as being for a prolonged period of time while not wearing appropriate PPE within approximately 3 feet of a person with Ebola while the person was symptomatic. However, the CDC previous version of their interim U.S. guidance for monitoring and movement of persons with potential Ebola virus exposure warned of transmission through close contact with Ebola patient. Last week, it read that close contact was defined as being within approximately 3 feet of an EVD patient or within the patient's room or care area for a prolonged period of time while not wearing recommended personnel protective equipment. Having direct brief contact with an EVD patient while not wearing recommended personnel protective equipment, brief interactions such as walking by a person or moving through a hospital do not constitute close contact. But we're starting to find out through MIT experiences when someone sneezes and your aerosol, the vapor goes through the air, it can travel 3 feet. CDC now does say, yes, you can get it through the air when someone sneezes, coughs, or anything like that, and their water droplets go through the air and they're aerosolized, and you could have the potential of getting it. So they're continually changing this. And again, the CDC, I go back to 2009, was out there with the swine flu, telling everyone they had computer models to let everyone know that this is going to be a huge outbreak and it's going to be millions of people who are getting the swine flu. They weren't even doing tests on people. They're just eyeballing people saying, yeah, you have it, yeah, you don't, yeah, and the whole thing just completely disappeared. So my trust in the CDC at this point, with everything that's been going on, is not very high in what they're saying. Now, Chris Christie is out there in New Jersey. He says he doesn't care what Obamacare says. He is not moving an inch on quarantine rules. He's keeping the people in New Jersey safe, and if people have to stay in their homes for a certain period of time before they're tested, then so be it. This is what's going to happen because he needs to make sure that the general public is safe. And in this case, we are dealing with something that is a virus that is spreading. If this is all true, again, we have no evidence. I haven't seen any people that actually have Ebola. Even the person that died, there are no pictures that I've been seeing or any evidence. We're just believing what the CDC, what the hospital says, and what the media has been telling us, and we're seeing no other evidence whatsoever. But we'll take it at face value of what they're saying is kind of true, but I'm not too sure at this time because I like to have the proof. Now, what's very interesting is the Red Cross and the World Health Organization are on opposite ends of what's going on in Liberia. The Red Cross said Tuesday the weekly total of Ebola victims collected by its body disposal teams around the Liberian capital is falling dramatically. The World Health Organization saying that the transmission and the people who are catching Ebola remains intense and is increasing. So they have two things going on here. The Red Cross says it's falling, and the World Health Organization says it's increasing. So we don't know what to believe, but all we do know is that there's troops inside of Liberia, there are troops inside of Sierra Leone from the UK and from the US, and it looks like they're trying to capture that whole area because, as we know, the natural resources in West Africa are newly discovered. They want to get in there, and they want to maintain control of these countries because wherever China and Russia are, that's where they're going to go. Now, we understand the Occupy Central is going on in Hong Kong, and what's very funny is that the umbrellas that they're using are made in the U.S., and there's complete facts and information saying that the people there have close contact to the United States, and a lot of organizations that are funding this, pushing this to remove the government of China. And China right now decided to go around and create a petition, and they've collected about 650,000 Hong Kong citizens, and they've signed the petition against the Occupy Central movement. Now, there was a website that was set up on October 25th, before this, but on October 25th, it looks like hackers were trying to bring it down and destroy it so the petition would disappear. But it looks like the citizens of Hong Kong all got together, put their names on this, and these are the people who are against the people protesting, and there's a lot more people who signed the petition than those people who are protesting at this time. Now, it looks like the Afghan government is taking control of their country. A lot of the troops are being removed from Afghanistan, but not all. And it seems as long as that bilateral security agreement is signed, which it is, which allows the troops to remain inside Afghanistan. There's about 10,000 troops that are going to remain there, and we're actually going to see this ramp up over time, because what we're seeing is that the former U.S. ambassador was out there saying, and this is a little hint of what's going to be happening, is that the newly elected Afghan government must eliminate corruption and rule more competently than the previous regime after NATO withdraws their troops from the area, and they only have a small number of 10,000 soldiers inside Afghanistan. But what we're seeing is that Afghanistan is turning towards China to help with any type of problems inside the country. Afghanistan has requested assistance from the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in its fight against the Taliban. So they're looking away from NATO and the United States, and they're going towards China. And as we know, China is in Afghanistan, pumping in billions of dollars, helping them mine copper from that area, and it seems like they're moving towards that form of government and away from the United States and NATO. And we'll have to see how the central bankers react to this. Now, France is going to be sending in more troops to Mali, and as we know, there is a case of Ebola inside Mali. We understand that China has set up business deals with Mali. It's the third largest gold producer in the world. We understand that France invaded Mali as soon as Germany wanted their gold back, and France said, oh crap, we don't have gold. We better invade Mali to get the gold for them. And now we can see that France is going to send more troops back into the country, because the terrorism that's going on there is just unbelievable. So they're going to try to help out any way they possibly can. Now, Hungarians are revolting right now. The government is planning to impose an internet tax on internet data traffic, and thousands of Hungarians rallied. They said this is absolutely ridiculous. Tens of thousands gathered in front of the economy ministry building on Sunday, urging the politicians to scrap the plan that will see internet service providers pay about 62 cents for every gigabyte of data traffic transferred over their networks. And they're saying that the measure would impede equal access to the internet, deepening the digital divide between Hungary's lower economic groups and limited internet access for cash-poor schools and universities. And of course, again, the internet should be free and open. There's no reason to put a tax on the people. I completely do not agree with this whatsoever, but again, they are doing it. Now, it looks like the EU might step in, and Hungary is out there saying, listen, if the EU decides to step in here, we are going to withdraw from the EU. So think twice before you do anything, because if you decide to push us and not tax the internet, we will withdraw from the EU, and we'll have to watch that very, very carefully. Now, it seems like in North Korea, they're building the propaganda again, back up, that North Korea has nuclear warheads for missiles. North Korea now has the ability to produce a miniaturized nuclear warhead that can be mounted atop a ballistic missile. North Korea has built a new testing facility that is probably intended to research how to launch ballistic missiles from a submarine or ship, according to a U.S. research institute. The analysis is based on recent satellite imagery at the East Coast site of Sinpo, where the institute says North Korea has a naval shipyard and research institute. Now, if their radar photos are as good as the ones when MH17 was shot down and when Russia was building up troops inside Ukraine, they have no proof whatsoever, because those are completely a throwback from the 70s where they were black and white and blurry. And of course, they're building this up, and just every time they come out with the propaganda about North Korea with nuclear weapons, or Iran, or any other of these countries, it always seems to be timed perfectly when they are making some type of deal with Russia or China. And it just so happens that Russia and North Korea officials have discussed the possibility of creating a visa-free regime between the two countries. The two countries have agreed to develop a business council which will organize contacts between businessmen from two nations. We have agreed to the establishment of the Russian Dprk Business Council. The council will unite businessmen with economic interest abroad who are looking to develop contacts. Russia has plans to extend its electric power grid into North and eventually South Korea, with Russian infrastructure company Rusgidro showing an interest in the project and developing working contacts with its North Korean counterparts. And every time North Korea, Mali, or any other place has any type of deal or connection to Russia and China, all of a sudden the propaganda comes out to demonize these countries, and we see it time and time again. Now, it looks like the rebels inside of Yemen, and as we know, everything is completely falling apart there. The people are rising up. They want their countries back, and it seems like the rebels have issued a new demand. They want control over the Yemeni military. Pretty much they want control over everything. They want more and more of their people in the military of Yemen. They want to take control. They want to maintain control, and they want to kick the puppet regime out of there. Now, it looks like, as we know, in Libya, things are not going well whatsoever. The government, the puppet regime, is off someplace where they're trying to manage the situation. And since there's a new government that's taken place in Libya, and they've taken over the news agencies inside Libya, the puppet regime has decided, well, they're not telling our side of the story and our propaganda, so we're going to create another news agency to replace the one they took away and the one that they're using at this time. So basically now there's going to be two news agencies, one telling the propaganda from the puppet regime and one news agency letting everyone know what's happening inside the country that have to do with the people inside the country. So we can see two things are happening right now. Now they're building up the case that Libya is a place where it's become a safe haven for rebels who have set up training camps to train terrorists. These camps have become the key providers of combat-ready rebels, and they're building the case of why the United States and the central bankers need to get into Libya. Now, the people of Libya are on the verge of capturing the oil fields inside Libya. Egypt is warning terrorist groups are poised to seize control of Libya's oil fields as the country's foreign minister appealed for an expansion of the Western-led campaign against jihadists fighting for the Islamic State to tackle the extremists inside Libya. So they're saying, the Islamic State or the terrorists inside of Libya are trying to reach the oil fields, and again, the central bankers are not going to let this happen. And we can see already they're making calls out there saying they're heading towards the oil fields. What are you going to do? And we can see that they're getting ready to do something. Now, the UN envoy is out there saying factional warfare in Libya is pushing the oil producer very close to the point of no return. The UN Special Envoy to the country said on Tuesday, I think this country is running out of time. The danger for the country is that in the past weeks we are getting very close to the point of no return. Code 4, they're going after the oil fields. They're going to pretty much sell the oil not using the dollar, and we're going to have a major problem because the other countries then will not have to hold the dollar in reserves, and this is going to have a big problem with the U.S. economy because those dollars will float back to the United States. It will devalue the dollar and collapse the market here, and they're not going to let this happen, and this is why they're making preparations to maneuver inside of Libya. We have to remember France and U.S. intelligence are setting up bases outside of Libya because they will be making their move very, very soon. Now, as we know, Russia and Iran, they have a joint war room inside of Iraq to fight the Islamic State, and Iran and Russia were said to have been operating a war room in Iraq to block Islamic State. Kurdish sources said in the Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps was overseeing a force of about 5,000 in northern Iraq at this time, and we'll have to see what the United States central bankers have to say about this, because again, as we know, they do not want China, Iran, Russia or Syria involved in fighting the Islamic State, because it is their proxy army, and they really don't want them bombing it. Now, the U.S. is trying to make their case saying, oh, we really don't know, which oil fields, which pipelines the Islamic State has, so we should destroy them all because this is where they're getting the funds by selling the oil. Well, let me just say this. They knew exactly in Libya, when the tribes took the oil, put it on a tanker, they knew exactly which tanker, when they were going to set sail, and they stopped it. They know exactly what's going on here, but they don't care, because the Islamic State is a proxy army. They're selling the oil using the US dollar. They know exactly where this is going, and they want it to go. They don't want to stop it. They're using this as an excuse to hit the infrastructure of Syria, to destroy their pipelines, to destroy their refineries, to bring down their economy. This is their plan. The Deputy Chief of Staff of the Iranian Armed Forces is out there saying, listen, we know exactly what the U.S. is doing. Our intelligence and our information, we know exactly where the Islamic State is. How doesn't the United States know where the Islamic State is, and how do they drop this material right where the Islamic State is? They are saying, listen, if we know, then the United States knows. And all of this is complete baloney. We know the United States is giving them aid. We know they're giving them military equipment. And we know they are funding them to push this war in Syria. So it looks like Iran is really out there saying, listen, we know what's going on. If Iran knows, we then know Syria knows. Then we know Russia knows. We know that, and China knows. We know they all know. They have satellites positioned over this area. They know exactly where everything is going, who's doing what, and we can see that they're just watching the situation and making sure that this doesn't go any further, or getting ready to do something else at this time. Okay, now it looks like the U.S. Air Force says it's not halting its use of depleted uranium weapons, and has recently sent them to the Middle East and is preparing to use them. And this is just unbelievable that they are preparing to do this. There is no other way around this. And of course, they don't really care. They don't care about the people. They don't care about the contamination. And right now it says there is no prohibition against the use of depleted uranium rounds, and the U.S. does make use of them. The use of depleted uranium in armor-piercing munitions allows enemy tanks to be more easily destroyed. Iraq spoke to the United Nations First Committee against the use of depleted uranium and in support of studying and mitigating the damage in already contaminated areas, because they used this back in the Iraqi war, and a lot of the areas are contaminated from the radiation from the uranium. A non-binding resolution is expected to be voted on by the committee this week, urging nations that have used depleted uranium to provide information on location targets. A number of organizations are delivering a petition to U.S. officials this week, urging them not to oppose the resolution. In 2012, a resolution on depleted uranium was supported by 155 nations and opposed by just the UK, US, France, and Israel. Several nations have banned depleted uranium, and in June, Iraq proposed a global treaty banning it, a step also supported by the European and Latin American parliaments. The U.S. has denied a relationship between depleted uranium and health problems in civilians and veterans. Studies of UK veterans are highly suggestive of a connection. The U.S. doesn't want studies done. In addition, the United States has used depleted uranium in civilian areas and identified those locations could suggest violations of Geneva Convention. And this is just horrendous, horrific, that they would actually use depleted uranium, especially for people and civilians. There is no reason for this, and our veterans, this is like Agent Orange all over again. And later on down the line, we're going to find out, yes, people have radiation poisoning, they have cancer, our veterans are very sick for this, and again, we can see from the top, the U.S. government, the government officials, they do not care whatsoever as long as they get their way. Now, German intel is out there, and they are saying that the Islamic State can now shoot down a plane. Now, see what happened here. They had reports saying the Islamic State was creating an air force, and they had 3 planes. Syria, Assad came in, destroyed the planes, and that kind of wiped out the no-fly zone, because you can't have a no-fly zone if the Islamic State doesn't have an air force. Now they're trying to say, well, they can shoot down planes, and this is why we should create a no-fly zone area and a buffer area. They're doing everything they possibly can to create this no-fly zone, and they'll use every propaganda instrument out there to do this. The Islamic State militants have obtained the 1970s model as well as modern manned portable air defense systems. These lightweight surface-to-air missile systems can be fired from the shoulder and operated by one person. This is coming from the German intelligence agency, saying that the Islamic State militants located in North Iraq have obtained air defense systems from the captured military arsenal of the Syrian army. So we can see right now that they're building this up. They're trying to convince everyone that, yes, that we need to create this no-fly zone, because this is in preparation of going after Assad, and they're going to continue with this propaganda until they get the no-fly zone. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.